Welcome to the Time to Lead series, in which today I'm going to talk about the kind of leader that we need in the current crisis. And to answer that question, I draw lessons from Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Churchill. I think it's clear to everybody that America is in crisis. One poll by NBC and the Wall Street Journal found that 80% of Americans feel that the country is out of control. Clearly, there are a lot of divisions in the country, international tension, economic crisis, COVID. The country is currently not doing well. But it's important to realize that this is not the worst crisis in history, even in fairly recent American history. The worst crisis, it was the Great Depression, in which in the early 30s, the unemployment rate exploded from about 5% to 25% without much of a social safety net, and the GDP essentially imploded. But behind these cold economic figures, there was a lot of human tragedy going on. People dispossessed, losing their homes, building sheds like Hoovervilles, they were even called after President Hoover at the time, clearly indicating how much confidence they had in the president. So this tremendous human suffering was there in those years, until there came this new leader elected in 1932, FDR. FDR is one of the most impactful leaders in the last century, if not more than that, and one of the best presidents according to all the ratings that I've seen. What can we learn from FDR's leadership in this great crisis? The first thing is that people in a crisis expect the leader to lead rather than to follow. Now, President Hoover had essentially lost all ability to lead. He was himself bewildered. He did not know what to do. Now, so how could the people have any confidence in such a leader? In came Roosevelt, and within the first 100 days, 15 major laws were pushed through Congress, and not each of these acts worked as well as the other ones. Some of them were not so effective, other ones were effective, but at least the people had the idea that something was being done in Washington about their situation. So that gave already hope. There was leadership. A second thing is that in a crisis, people are afraid. They're bewildered. They do not know what to do. They don't want their leader to add to that. They want a leader to be rational, cool, measured, and Roosevelt definitely was that. It already started in his inaugural address in 1933, in which he said these famous words: "First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror." The people were terrified, and here there was a president, he said, "No, we only have to fear the fear of terror." That gave a lot of confidence to people. Those words reverberate through history. A third aspect is that Roosevelt also made it about us. The American people intuitively understand that together they can do things that individuals or groups can never even think of achieving. So it is us, not we versus them. And often in the speeches, the fireside chats, the press conferences, Roosevelt made it about us. One of the situations that he was facing later in his presidency, as an example, was that, say, in 1940, late 1940, Britain was the only power in the world fighting against Germany. Britain was hard pressed, and Britain was broke. It couldn't pay anymore for its orders in the United States. So Roosevelt had to come up with a solution, because he understood that if Britain could no longer fight, that would be bad news for America as well. So Roosevelt came up with Lend-Lease, but much of the population was very isolationist, and there was a lot of opposition in Congress. So he in his speech, this is how he explained it. He harked back to the days of the banking crisis, the 1933 crisis. And he said, we met the issue with courage and realism. And now, fast forward to today, when he was speaking, is we face this new crisis, this new threat to the security of our nation. And we are going to do that with the same courage and realism. It was a powerful message that the Americans are in this together. Now that is another powerful lesson how to lead in a crisis. Now, I already briefly referred to the fact that this situation, this quote was from when the Second World War was already going on, and indeed that crisis was of unprecedented magnitude. In May, June 1940, completely unexpectedly, in a mere 6 weeks, the German army destroyed the mighty French army. The Brits had to evacuate their soldiers, the famous Dunkirk evacuation, but they lost all the material, all their guns, all their tanks, and everything. Fortunately, their lives were not lost. But you don't win, as Churchill would say, you don't win wars with evacuations. And the battle over Britain was starting to begin. And in came Churchill. He was appointed prime minister on the day the German forces attacked the French in Western Europe on the May 10th. And his leadership, his impactful leadership, offers some additional lessons. Some lessons that overlap with Roosevelt's lessons, but I now shift gear here towards a second leader because he adds some more additional nuances. It was in 1940, when Britain was fighting without France, that there was essentially, it seemed there was no hope. What Churchill did was, he was brutally honest in the assessment, but he also gave hope. And this is what he said in the speech on June 4th, 1940, his famous Fight on the Beaches speech. He said, we shall go on to the end. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender. Now that is brutally honest, that there was fighting going on. It wasn't baking cookies here. But the hope was there. We will continue to fight until the new world with all its power and might steps forth to the rescue and liberation of the old. So, honesty and hope. A fifth element of leading in unprecedented crisis is that the great leaders plan for the world post-crisis. So while they are in a crisis, they already are looking forward to the post-crisis and plan for that. So during the darkest days of the Second World War, Churchill was willing to put up with de Gaulle, the leader of the Free French. France was completely destroyed, but he put up with his insufferable behavior because he understood that after the Second World War, stable Europe could not arise without a confident and strong France. So he was willing to do it for that sake. At Yalta, the war looked really good in early 1945. However, it was not won yet. Churchill was spending a lot of time designing a post-war world in which the Soviet Union's influence was minimized as much as possible. And he was often fighting alone. So he was the only one of the big three that was fighting for that. And in 1946, before other people wanted to see it, he already warned about this new world of where there would be an iron curtain between Western and Eastern Europe, before other people wanted to accept that. So let's look at these two great leaders in crises which are even worse than ours. So what kind of leader do we need in November? In my view, it is the candidate who is best able to convince us that he is able to lead. He does that in a cool, measured, and consistent manner, who unifies the American populace to overcome our current crisis, who is honest and realistic about the challenges that we are still facing, while at the same time offering hope that together we can do it, and who has the wisdom and shows that to look ahead, to plan for the catastrophes that hopefully will never materialize. If you are interested in more on the life and leadership of FDR, as well as a number of other leaders, I kindly refer you to my book, Time to Lead, available as a hard copy and e-version through various sellers in the United States and beyond. Thank you.